There are so many words that describe Fred Assaf. I mean, trying to put in a bucket of just like a few words is so interesting because he's hilarious.
Fantastic. Positive. Goofy. Enthusiastic.
Encouraging.
Amazing. Hilarious. Joyful. Kind.
Silly.
Funny.
Zany.
Intellectual. Endearing.
When I think of Fred Assaf, I think of fun, I think of laughter, I think of kids.
So I'd say, first of all, friend. He's a friend. And you know, you don't have a lot of those, true friends in your life. And, you want to hold on to them. So I'm very fortunate.
Visionary, creative, hardworking, a family guy.
Empathetic, joyful, sincere.
Fred is the most supportive person in the world.
Fearless, fun, fiery, larger than life.
So I met Fred because I was on the search committee as an incoming chair at Pace Academy. And my job was to interview candidates.
Fred was at a school finishing a 5-year contract. And so I encouraged him to just see what was out there just before he kind of committed for the next, 16, 17, 20 years, the rest of his life, sort of. And so headed up to Princeton, New Jersey, and met with the head consultant who said that he thought Pace Academy was a great fit for him, and he was the head search consultant. But the search closed in like 24 hours, so he had to get his application done immediately. So he was, I'm pretty sure, the last person to apply.
There was another person I liked more, to be honest. And then, they said, no, I think Fred's really strong.
I'm thinking back to our search committee where we meet this young guy who was so interesting and had just the most amazing laugh. I'm like, we gotta hire him. And I was lucky because Paul, the other co-chair of the committee, said, you get to call Fred with the offer. So I remember calling you and just how happy you were and how happy we were. And it was just, the joy in your voice. It was a great moment.
I was on the board, and eventually I went on the executive committee when Paul Garcia, who had then become chair, decided he wanted to formalize the corporate governance process for the school. Fred had recently been hired, and this was our first opportunity to really work together. And so Fred and I kind of met over that project, and it was interesting because he had a really clearly defined idea as to the appropriate roles for members of the Board of Trustee as opposed to members of faculty, as opposed to the administrators, the heads of school.
Well, my first impression of Fred was so different than most headmasters. And Fred immediately struck me as not your typical headmaster. It was very apparent that he loved children and he liked people and he preferred to be around them. So my first thing is, I actually want to be this guy's friend.
But I quickly made amends. Someone told him that, which wasn't a great start to our relationship, but it got off pretty well.
Fred is always the one, wants to go to work, prefers the children to the adults, likes to be in the classroom, and that was just very apparent the first time I met him. And he's just got an energy that draws you in to the point that you think, I gotta be around this. I got to have me some of that.
Fred is humble. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and that's been incredibly important to our school, that when you live on West Paces Ferry and run a school in Buckhead, I think that there's a tendency towards self-importance or self-seriousness, and Fred has never taken himself too seriously.
When I think of Fred, I think completely of the word trust. First of all, he is so fun to work with because he completely trusts me to do my job.
When I think about great leaders and the skills that they bring to their work, what I admire most about Fred's leadership is his ability to find the right people for the right job and to trust them to do that job well.
Fred's influence on Pace is incredibly hard to describe in words. But I will say that he has brought a certain level of spirit and pride to Pace that might not have existed in the same way 20 years ago, or possibly even 10 years ago.
We've always had great teachers and great students, but I don't think we had the pride in Pace Academy that great schools require. When I worked here prior to Fred's arrival, and what Fred brought with him, besides the pretty buildings and facilities, which are maybe connected to this sense of pride, but not the key to it. What Fred brought with him was a desire for us to see ourselves as a great school and not as some lesser than institution on the avenue. We will not take a back seat to Westminster or Lovett or Marist or Galloway or Padea. We are every bit their equal and more. And we needed to see ourselves like that in ways that we did not until Fred arrived.
He's completely changed Pace and the school's reputation in Atlanta. It's always been a great school, but its reputation now is so well known, and for good reason. And that there's so much behind that reputation that is to Fred's credit.
Fred has always kept as his North Star what's best for the students. What are we doing for the students? How can we make their experience as great as possible? How can we make sure that we keep them at the center of all we do?
He has a gift of making connections with all of our students, from our youngest students to our oldest students, and seeing the gifts that they bring and seeing the joy in learning. And that is so inspiring.
Fred likes to have fun, and sometimes it can be a little difficult to keep up with him. We do our best, but would you have it any other way?
He puts Cokes and soft drinks in his office. Why? So the kids will come to him. Most people don't want the kids in their office. He wants that. He wants that energy. He walks campus so that he can know each individual child. He wants to know the families. And that's really something that Fred Assaf brought to Pace Academy.
The school is unrecognizable from what it was 20 years ago. I've been there for 21 years, so technically I'm a little older than Fred, but only technically. He has transformed the school from what was a sweet neighborhood school with about 800 students to a nationally recognized, prestigious, and highly sought-after institution.
When Fred and I attend events, especially even outside of Atlanta, we've been going to New York now for probably almost a decade. And I see the look in alumni's eyes. Their eyes pop. Their memories of Pace come flooding back.
You can immediately see when a student walks in, and oftentimes there have been times where they don't know he's coming or they don't know he's with me, and the sheer just joy on their face when they walk in and they see him is just amazing to see. They all talk about how many of them have gone to other, many of them have friends who have gone to other independent schools across the country who do not know their head of school, who have not ever interacted with their head of school, and who certainly don't believe that their head of school is going to show up and take them to dinner.
Fred has been able to navigate growth at Pace and addition of programs such as the ICGL, DEI, the ARC, and a lot of things that make us unique in who we are today. But at the same time, he's been able to really focus on what makes Pace special, which are the people who are on our campus and entrusted to us, and the relationships that we build within our community.
Fred's greatest gift, frankly, to Pace and to Atlanta, to Buckhead, to Atlanta, has been his addition to the way that you can look at education. I think that when you talk about the culture at Pace Academy, from the moment I set foot on Pace, it felt different when Fred was there.
From the seat that I sit in, it would be, I would be overlooking his greatest gift to Pace if I did not let you know that in 20 years, Pace has probably benefited from Fred being a master fundraiser, which I'm thankful that I get to work with him in that component and aspect of his job. But his overall contribution of gifts would easily exceed $100 million.
He will forever leave to Pace this idea of what it means to actually be a family. So when people come to visit, they feel that. They feel that sense of family. They feel the tight-knit community. That doesn't just happen by accident, you know? It's his leadership, his ability to model what that looks like for us that I think will forever change who we are at Pace.
I shared one earlier this year with the students about traveling through Greece with Fred. He was a co-chaperone on that trip, but it struck me that it didn't matter who we were talking to. It was Fred's friend. You know, everybody in Greece was Fred's friend.
I will say, in traveling with Fred, so remember that we go to colleges, and colleges are my gig, right? Like, so we walk into places, I've generally set up the visits, I know the people, and I'm used to the people coming out and being like, hey, it's Jonathan, you're here. And that generally happens, but then by the time we're getting ready to leave, it's always like, oh my God, Fred, you're so glad you came. When are you coming back? It's suddenly like I'm nobody. It's a good story about Fred and how he takes over every room he's in. But yeah, he definitely is the star of the show by the time we leave, of people he just met, and most of the time people I've known a really long time.
If you asked me how I would describe what Fred accomplished over the last 20 years, I'd put it in context of, think of your life. Think of your career, your family, any aspect, things that happen, your journey over 20 years. You know, there's lots of good things. I mean, we're all blessed with lots of, if we're lucky, blessed with lots of good things. And there's some bad things that happen. It's how you lead through that. It's how you overcome that without losing your values, your sense of community. And Fred has just crushed that.
To watch Fred go through life and find humor in everything, and I am a firm believer that every headmaster wants to be a little bit more like Fred. I really believe that. And if they don't, they're doing it wrong.
What Fred elevated was the care and concern for everyone in the community. I've watched him wade into impossible situations with an eye toward helping a family out of terrible crisis. And many of these circumstances, very few people know about.
I interact with Fred and the chair of the board, Elizabeth now, on things that most people never even know about, and to the extent they do learn about them, they're rumors. That's what they hear. And so, because I have a different perspective, and I see Fred in some pretty stressful moments, and I see his clarity of vision, I see his compassion. He drives for the truth. He tries to understand the underlying dynamic. Fred never loses sight that the primary constituencies that we're here to protect are the school and the students.
I believe that when you are a leader with a servant heart, that it just allows everyone to follow.
He sets the standard. And so at the end of the day, Pace Academy is what it is today, in my view, primarily because of Fred Assaf. He's the big guy with the big laugh and the big heart, the drive for excellence. And because of him and his commitment to the school, he has made Pace Academy truly the #1 choice of all the private schools in the city of Atlanta.
I think I can speak for both of us that we are forever thankful to the leadership of the school. By coming here, we were able to be part of so many great people's lives and their education, but we were also able to, on a very personal level, give our kids what they needed to thrive. And that is really all I can ask for as a parent.
Oh, congratulations on 20 years, Fred. You know I love you with all my heart and soul. Pace is so lucky to have you, and I am lucky to have had you as a work husband. Best of luck to Brent. I don't know that he can do it. We'll see, but I do love you. Call me when you need me. You know where I am.
Fred, congratulations, my friend. 20 years.
Happy 20 years, Fred. I love you.
Let's just summarize Fred in one sentence.